What Nate Hagens calls the Great Simplification is coming for us. And it's either going to be a break with our current reality and a collapse into a completely new reality, or else we're going to gracefully transition and kind of bend and lean into the new reality. And even under the best circumstances, the lean in circumstance, it's not just going to change how we live, but also why we live. And I think there was never a better time to become kind of a philosopher, kind of navel gazing and autodidact and self-reflective and all of those things, because we're going to have to need to know why we're here in a world where there are no distractions any longer. And everything's going to change. How we're entertained, how we grow our food, how we pair, how we have sex and reproduce, or if we reproduce. We're going to have to change how we do all those things. Therefore, we're going to have to start changing now why we do those things. Why do we pair? Why do we reproduce? Do we know why? I don't know that historically we have known why we do many of the things that culture has passed on to us. And so we have a new opportunity in the Great Simplification to completely rebuild culture from scratch. And it's not just an opportunity, but we're actually going to be kind of forced into it. So we don't have much of a choice. But we do have more choice surrounding our new circumstances if we're able to build into it and not remain in a state of denial that it's not going to happen. The collapse is going to happen. I think that everybody agrees, despite religious and political affiliation at this point from both sides of the aisle. You're seeing people basically talk their way into believing that what's coming is going to be a huge constraint. If we build toward this thing instead of being in denial about it, then we can choose to move off the grid. We can go get a tiny home. We can get the solar panels. We can buy the electric car. We can stop relying on fossil fuels. We can get the horses, would be even better. That's how they did it pre-industrially. We could get the land. We could garden. We could stockpile books and musical instruments, because in a post-collapse world, there will be no Netflix and scrolling any longer. And music and storytelling is how the ancestors entertained themselves. And we could start hand selecting. In a way, it's exciting just anticipating this. We don't have to dread it, and we don't have to live in denial about it. We can build toward it by hand selecting the people we want to spend the collapse with. We can do that. We can build hippie communes. Nobody is stopping us from doing that right this minute. And I also think that we need to start redefining what we want out of life. I mean, what do we want out of romantic pairings, for example? Because pretty soon here, there will be no more diamond rings and three-tiered cakes and huge frilly dresses and tuxedos and honeymoons. So do we want to even pair in a life that's more simplified? Do we, when we're just already so consumed by eking out an existence for ourselves, will we want to reproduce? Will we want to have kids? Because we won't have access to birth control. So if we don't want kids, we need to practice sexlessness, asexuality, now. And you are seeing people do that. There are celebrities ranging from Halle Berry, Drew Barrymore, Justin Bieber, Khloe Kardashian. There are so many celebrities who are making celibacy vows. People are doing their intermittent fasting. In many ways, we're already preparing for the constraints and limitations of the future. You're seeing these movements like 4B and MGTOW. People are moving away from romance, moving away from marriage, having fewer children. And that's really good that in some ways we're already building the culture that will lend itself and map nicely onto the constraints of the future. We don't want to go into farming and self-sufficiency and asexuality and basically continuous fasting, kicking and screaming. We don't want to go into hunting and fishing and being one with nature against our will. We want to move toward that with our consent. And a lot of people actually like and prefer living that way. I know that I would rather spend time with people that want to be in nature, hunting, fishing, all of those things that I do. I do those things. I'm a farmer. I'm always out and about. I prefer people who like the uphill challenge of growing their own food, who would rather listen to live music than sit around scrolling the apps and watching Netflix. The Great Simplification is going to avail enormous amounts of time to us, which is a real treat. I mean, we can start building excitement toward this. What would you do if you had nothing but time? If you had no job, no income, no need for income, no car, nowhere to be, nowhere to go? What would you do? What would you say? Would you have stories to tell? Would you have instruments that you can play? Do you know how to feed yourself? Do you have a means of growing food or providing for hunting or fishing or providing for yourself? Where's the nearest farm?